Welcome everybody. We are starting our second video with Ryan from Unbounce. He has so graciously joined us to talk about the 10 expert tips, or excuse me, not 10, 8. I don't even know where I got 10.
I can throw in a couple more.
Yeah, we'll bonus 2. There's 10 videos. The 8 expert tips for using Unbounce, and this is part of our series, which is the ridiculously easy guide to using Unbounce, which we've been rolling out for a couple weeks now. If you didn't check out our last video with Ryan, he talks a little bit about the history of Unbounce, his role in a little bit more detail, and kind of the progression from him being the second employee, which is just like mind-blowing, all the way up to 100 plus employees right now. So today, I'm really going to hand most of the conversation over to Ryan as he talks about, what are the things in Unbounce that you want to check out that maybe aren't just readily apparent. When you log in and you start building a landing page, there are a lot of things that are just easy and are kind of right there in front of you, but there are a lot of nuances that you, as an expert Unbounce user, might want to know about. So Ryan, I'm just going to let you take it away. I'll ask you a question every now and then, but what are some of the things that people need to know about when they're using Unbounce that are awesome tips?
Sounds good. I'll get right into it and say that they're in no particular order. Although I will start with what is probably my favorite of them. So Unbounce, we're a platform to help marketers improve especially their post-click conversion rates. We have targeted landing pages, pop-ups, sticky bars, so a way to build all that content to create more conversions. And one of my favorite features that we have is a way to personalize the content on those landing pages, pop-ups, and sticky bars. And you can do that with dynamic text replacement. So dynamic text replacement is important because if let's say you're using dynamic keyword insertion with AdWords, and then you pass along those keywords to your landing pages, or even, let's say you're doing email marketing and you append, let's say, like particular query parameters to a link that clicks through to a landing page. With dynamic text replacement, you can take those keywords and then actually rewrite the content on the page to match those keywords. It's great, because it improves relevance. When visitors arrive on a page that shows what they've searched for, it tells them that they're in the right place. So relevance will then improve time on page. With AdWords in particular, that can also help improve your landing page experience. And landing page experience is a key factor in quality score. So used well, dynamic text replacement in Unbounce can help you potentially, improve your quality score, lower your cost per click, and improve your conversion rates.
What are some of the ways that people typically use them? I know that for us, we have a campaign where we took a client that had a lot of landing pages in like different parts of the country, and they were on WordPress, and they had one for each region, and then phone numbers. And then we consolidated them into just a handful of landing pages and used it for like phone number replacement and then like geographic. What are typical use cases when someone's using that in their AdWords campaign or otherwise?
Yeah, well, the use case you pointed out is, I think, one of the strongest, which is the ability to scale, like the personalization of your campaigns. So, we've gone from a time where you had your website that was impossible to update to then Unbounce, where you were able to build a landing page for every campaign, to now where you actually don't even need to do that. You can just create that one page and then scale it out to all of your ads by taking the keywords from your ads and then sending them into the pages. So that is really the key primary use case. We've seen other customers, like with their email marketing, for example, take any like merge field that you can put in an email, you can pass through to the landing page. So you can actually insert a person's first name, throughout a page, their plan. So once again, just improving relevance, improving time on page for all that. And one thing that I should note with it, which is pretty important, this is a little technical, but we do it all. We actually rewrite the content like at the server level. So when those parameters come in, as the page is being served, we completely rewrite the code of the page so that for Google or whoever might be crawling and looking at the actual like code of the page, those keywords are in the code. So for all they know, there actually are 100 different landing pages matching each of the terms you've passed along. So that's why it's really effective.
That is really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and on the AdWords side, affecting your quality score when it comes to relevance or the keywords that are, that people are searching for, totally helpful, and so awesome that you don't have to create a bunch of those landing pages. That's cool.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, for most people, if they can arrive at a page that shows the things they're searching for, obviously we've all seen like the dynamic keyword insertion like gone wrong, posts. So barring those sorts of situations, it just shows people that they're in the right place. And when you know you're in the right place, that the click you made was the right click, that improves time on page, which again improves your quality score and so on. So it's pretty effective.
Yeah, we actually recently ran a test with a client where they had regional phone numbers, but they were regionalized by state. So it's not really regionalized, but like a large region. And then we further regionalized it down into like with cities, and the improvement in performance, just having phone numbers that were more localized rather than like statewide, was pretty massive. And so you can take that to a lot of different levels, but we've definitely seen good results from doing the dynamic text replacement. And the more local you get or the more personalized is clearly, where everything's headed right now. It's been a major difference.
Well, I mean, personalization is such a significant market trend right now. And I mean, imagine, put yourself in the shoes of the end user. If you're looking for a service and you click and then the phone number is outside of your city, I would immediately think oh man, that's going to be such a pain. I don't want to work with them. I want to find someone nearby. So being able to do that personalization with something like dynamic text replacement, or in the other video I talked about with our pop-ups and sticky bars, you can target them by city. By doing that kind of personalization will help improve conversion rates. We see it over and over and over.
Yeah, in Phoenix, there are 3 area codes, and there are certain area codes that I wouldn't even call just in our same city. So anyway, all right, what's next? What's another feature experts need to know?
So this one is this is more of a usability kind of hack. So it's something just to improve efficiency. But everyone, working away on Microsoft Word, Google Docs, Pages, whatever your tool of choice is, copying and pasting is just, we're all so used to it. So we introduced a feature a while ago that gives you the ability to copy the content from a landing page, pop-up sticky bar, and then go over to a completely separate tab or browser or whatever, and then paste that content in. Which, you might think why is that such a big deal? But imagine, you're building a landing page, you've created a very particular form with a set of form fields, and now you want to create, let's say, another landing page that potentially has a different design, but you want exactly that form. Instead of having to recreate it, you can now just copy and paste that form into the other page. I would say another really significant use case is, one of the reasons people pick Unbounce is because we give our customers such strong creative control over the content they create. So if you have, or if your designer has created a particular landing page with a very specific design, you can now easily copy those designs into, let's say, a pop-up on another tab. So instead of having to start from scratch or start from a template, you can just grab whatever design you have, paste it, and then just hit the ground running.
That is cool. So, and we've used Unbounce for years, and I didn't know this existed. So, so you can do an entire form. Can you also do sections, a header? What are some of the boundaries to that, or are there boundaries?
Yeah. So I believe I'm not sure about the section level actually offhand. I think you can copy an entire page section. So if you select that page section, you can go and then paste it into the other one. But if anyone watching this tries that and they can't do it, then sorry. You can, so in Unbounce, you can create a box, which is a container, and then you can add, various elements within that box. So you could have your form, you could have a bunch of images, some text, and then you can copy that entire box and then just paste it elsewhere.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and you mentioned something just in passing about bringing designs from your landing page maybe to a convertible or a pop-up or a sticky bar, and to recreate, not everyone has a design or aesthetic, especially if maybe you haven't worked at an agency that long and you're not visualizing the fonts or the colors, like a designer does. So to just be able to duplicate that and not really have to worry about it makes life easy for everybody.
Yeah, seriously. It's part of the removing tech bottlenecks. Like, it just makes it easier to get your work done.
All right, what else?
So the next two that I was thinking are pretty closely related, but they are like questions that I often heard, or even if I go to conferences and I'm talking to people, it's one of the main things they'll bring up, which is, so I build my landing pages with Unbounce, like how do I get them on my domain? Or if you're an agency and then you have multiple clients, it's like, how do I make sure that my pages can go on my clients' domains? So with Unbounce, you can add as many domains as you want. They're free, they're unlimited. It's if you know kind of how the inner workings of the web work, it's you set up a CNAME record where you basically just tell your domain, hey, show the pages that Unbounce is hosted over here. So it's a pretty easy way to get pages that you build through the Unbounce platform to appear on your own domain. And then kind of the second one, which is coupled pretty tightly with that, is that we have a direct integration with WordPress. So if if you use WordPress or your clients use WordPress, you can just install the WordPress plugin. So you install the plugin within WordPress, and then after that, anything that you publish from within Unbounce and say to publish to that WordPress domain will just automatically appear on your WordPress domain.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit more, because with the CNAME, what you're really creating is a subdomain, right? Where it might be like go.paracore.com or form.paracore.com. But with WordPress, you're actually on the root domain. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good point of differentiation. The thing with the subdomain situation is like you could use a root domain. It's just typically your website is hosted at your root domain. And so you don't want to replace your website. So you use a subdomain. And then that way you can have like www.paracore.com as your main site. And then like try.paracore.com could be the domain that you use for your ads. Whereas to your point with WordPress, you don't have to use a subdomain. The WordPress integration allows you to publish directly to the root domain or whatever domain it is that you have set up through WordPress.
Yeah. And I know that with a lot of our clients, they much prefer that approach of being able to have the page just right on their domain. It just feels better to them. We're not an SEO company, we just do PPC. So there are a lot of questions with what is the SEO impact of driving traffic to a subdomain versus being on the root domain. So do you have any insight into that? If it has an SEO impact? I've heard that if you're kind of on the same domain, you're in pretty good shape, the same root domain, but what's your take on that?
I'm not an SEO expert. So I know that there's some finesse to this that's a little outside my wheelhouse. But typically, most of the time, the landing pages you build, you're not building them for SEO. Your website is built for SEO. Your blog is built for SEO. Your landing pages are built for conversion. So quite often, even if you wanted your landing pages to rank, they're not going to rank that well. So since you're building landing pages and publishing them to a subdomain, it's not like you're taking that much of a hit, because most of our customers will hide those landing pages from search engines anyway, because you can actually be penalized for having duplicate content. Otherwise, let's say you were posting a blog to a subdomain versus a blog on your main site. Yeah, at that point, I think it's going to have a much more significant SEO impact. But where landing pages are concerned, it's not usually such a big deal.
Yeah. You mentioned something. So is it, you said most clients hide the pages from Google search, maybe to avoid penalty. That seems to be a theme as far as you guys see, is that people hide those a lot?
Yeah, most of the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because if you're building, as we were talking about before, if you're building like the dynamic text replacement example you gave, before that, if you had to build like 100 pages, you don't want 100 very similar pages to wind up being crawled by Google. So typically our customers will hide all of those, in which case the search ranking doesn't matter anyway.
Sure. Talk about what's the difference as far as implementation goes from a technical perspective? Is it easier to set up the CNAME records? Is it easier to do WordPress? What's the technical impact of the decision that you make?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like technical proficiency. If you know what a CNAME record is, honestly, like there's not really much that's easier to set up than that. But you do have to know, like, who's your registrar. You have to know where to find your DNS settings. You have to know how to create the record for the subdomain. Name the subdomain and then point it over to Unbounce, unbouncepages.com. So if you know what you're doing, the whole thing can take like a minute, 2 minutes. But it is a really big point of friction for most people because most people are never going to touch their DNS. And so it can be quite challenging. But we've worked really hard to set up our knowledge base so that regardless of who your registrar is, you can go in there and find very specific instructions. So it can be a stumbling point. It is for a lot of people, but we've tried to reduce the friction there. Whereas WordPress is just like, it's so familiar and easy for people, right? You go into WordPress, you find the plugin, you set it up, and then that's it. You're done. You never have to touch your DNS settings. So WordPress is definitely the easier of the two if you're not technical. If you're familiar with DNS, then it doesn't really matter. They're both pretty simple.
Yeah. Great. All right. Tell us what's next.
This one I think is really awesome. So just a few weeks ago, actually, we launched a direct in-app integration with Zapier. So the way the web has evolved, like most of us in marketing, our tech stack is just so diverse. We have so many different tools that we use. Never mind having to get leads from, let's say, Unbounce over into, whatever tools it is that your clients use, whatever CRM they happen to use. So we had a number of integrations built into Unbounce already: Salesforce, Marketo, HubSpot, Infusionsoft, MailChimp, and a few others. But now we have a direct integration with Zapier. And so Zapier is a platform that basically, they integrate everything. And so within Unbounce, you now have access to over 60 additional integrations. So without having to leave the platform or go anywhere else, there's a pretty massive list of integrations that you can scroll through to set up, all within Unbounce. And it also gives you access outside of Unbounce. Like if you go to the Zapier website, I think they have an additional 900 applications available. So you can integrate Unbounce and pretty much anything through the Zapier integration.
Wow. So, what does someone need to know when they're using that? Because you had integrations before, and you would kind of just click, it would, and you still have the same ones, and it would basically just connect the two systems, and you're pretty much good to go. What do people need to know when it releases Zapier? Do they need to have their own Zapier account? What's kind of the learning curve look like? I know that the options are far greater, but what's the impact of that?
Yeah, so the account question is a good point. Zapier is a paid service, so you do have to have a Zapier subscription, which they start, they're pretty inexpensive, and then they scale up depending, if you're sending 50,000 leads every month, it's going to be kind of pricey. But also, if you're sending 50,000 leads every month, you're doing all right. It's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. From a technical standpoint, it's basically the same as Unbounce's previous integrations. So the ones that are available within the Unbounce app, you can just go and click directly. For example, if you want to send a weekly or a daily roundup of your leads collected to a Slack channel, you can do that now. And there's a button within Unbounce that you can just click to enable that. But if you want to enable something that's a little more complex, Zapier has some pretty advanced functionality where you can enable custom filters. You can edit the text, I think, that goes through the integration. There's a fair bit that's quite advanced that you can do within the Zapier app. So if you want to make it more advanced, you have the ability to do that through Zapier's application. But if you want to keep things pretty straightforward, the ones in Unbounce are just click, connect. I think it's 3 clicks to set it up.
Yeah. Well, I know that in other scenarios where we've used Zapier, you can set up multi-step workflows. So the lead comes in, an email goes to someone, it's pushed in your CRM, and then it goes to Slack and whatever. So I know that the feature set really expands greatly when you start using Zapier the way that it's being used that you talked about. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can do some rad stuff. Like one of our a guy in our marketing team had built out this conversion quest campaign. We actually wrote a blog post about it. And the premise of it, like it was meant to be a game where, let's say, Adam, you sign up and, the date is, it's January 15th and, your conversion rate on your landing page is 10%. Well, your goal is by February 15th to increase your conversion rate to 15%. He was able to set, like through Zapier, he was able to capture, kind of your basic information through a form and then tweak it so that when you got your email, you got a very customized email telling you exactly what your own goals were. And that was all done through Zapier. So it's crazy. Like once you get in there, you can do some really advanced stuff with the integrations.
That's really cool. So when we were communicating before this interview, you had mentioned kind of like app-like features. Is that what you were referring to when you say kind of app-like?
Exactly. What I think of as app-like is usually like several applications connected with some sort of advanced tagging or filtering or functionality. The kind of thing where typically you would have thought like, oh man, am I going to have to like contract a developer to do this? Now with a lot of it, you can actually just kind of figure it out and try it just as a marketer without really strong technical chops.
Yeah. Yeah, it is mind-blowing. I mean, anytime people are talking about different systems, at least for us, like their CRMs or whatever, maybe we haven't used them, maybe we have. It's like Zapier is always the first place we look to just ensure that we're able to connect the data and make it flow the right way. And I mean, 90% of the time, you're good.
Yeah, that's such a good point as an agency. I mean, if you're an agency and you have a variety of clients, every client is going to have a different set of tools that they want you to work with. And so Zapier gives you a way to connect your landing pages, pop-ups, sticky bars, all the leads you collect in Unbounce to whatever tool your clients use. I mean, you can send custom text messages whenever you get a conversion come in if you want to. You can set up text messages only when conversions come in if they don't have a Gmail address. Like, there's a lot of advanced functionality there.
That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, cool. What do you got next?
So another, talking about conversions, it's a bit of a story, but like, again, back in the day, I would have people call Unbounce and they'd be really stressed out because they have published a landing page. They sent out direct mailers, so they've sent out postcards with a link to the landing page, and then they spelt the URL wrong. And they always wanted to know, like, what can I do with this wrong URL? We now have a few different ways to handle that. But basically, like, imagine someone types in the wrong URL, and instead of getting your landing page, they get what's called a 404 error. And a 404 is just a code, which means like the page you're looking for isn't there. Like, it just doesn't exist. So with Unbounce, you can create custom 404 pages. This means that whatever domain or subdomains you add, you can publish a landing page to say like try.paracore.com/404, and then anytime anyone mistypes the URL or goes somewhere by accident or hits a page that doesn't exist, instead of just getting an error message, you can create a custom page so that whenever anyone hits your 404 page, they'll hit a custom landing page instead. The cool thing about that is, for all the people that are missing your pages, it still gives you an opportunity to present them with an offer and still potentially convert them. So it's just another way to, I was talking about that last mile, like you work so hard to get people there, just tip them over the edge.
Yeah. It's also like, hey, it's not the page you're looking for, so want to send us your email? What the hell? Why not?
Send us your email and we'll find you that page.
That's right. Send us your email and we'll find the page you were looking for and we'll email it to you.
Yeah. Even if you don't put in a form, let's say, you can at least, you can put in like something delightful or goofy. I've seen pages that like install games, so you can play like Pong or something on those pages. Or you can include information about your company and then send them over to your website instead. So there's a lot of different things you can do. At least this way, they're just not hitting a plain white web page with like an error message at the top.
Yeah. So when people set those up, you said that you just name the page 404, and then if they error out within the Unbounce like environment, like if they type in the page wrong or something, then Unbounce recognizes that that page doesn't exist and then will automatically do the 404, or do they need to set something else up? Because I think on websites, maybe you would need to like redirect someone to a page or build it differently, but that's not the case here?
With a website, I'm not sure how it works. I'm pretty sure, it's something to do with DNS settings again with a website, but with Unbounce, no, you don't have to do any of that. You do literally just name the page 404.
And the numbers, 404.
404. Yeah, it's in our documentation. But yes, so it would be, let's say again, the domain you're using to publish your landing pages is try.paracore.com. Then you would do try.paracore.com/404. Mm-hmm. And then anytime anyone goes to try.paracore.com and some variation of a path that doesn't exist, they'll all go to that 404 page instead.
That is cool. Nice. That's a sweet tip.
That's a very not many people know about that one. It's that's like an Easter egg. That's an Unbounce deep cut.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, what was that landing page that I was trying to figure out? And I'm just like typing random words because, ours are kind of the same, but also just enough different where you can't remember anything. So if my browser doesn't remember it, I don't. So I see those 404 pages all the time, or the error pages at least. Yeah. All right. Talk to us a little bit about, you have A/B testing here down next.
Yeah, so, I keep mentioning landing pages, pop-ups, sticky bars, all these ways to convert, 404 pages, personalization, but we also have built-in A/B testing, which is available on all plans. So, whether it's a landing page and then, early 2018, we're releasing A/B testing for pop-ups and sticky bars, so it's available on all products. And then this way you can, continually test and optimize to improve your conversion rates. You can create multiple variants of your pages, see what works. In our previous video, I mentioned that we launched a landing page analyzer that's partially powered by machine learning insights. So some data that we've collected from all the hundreds of millions of conversions that we've facilitated. And that analyzer provides just some tips, things you may want to try to improve your conversion rates. And then Unbounce includes a really simple A/B testing tool that you can use to create multiple variants of your pages, create those changes, and then we provide you the stats of which pages are converting best, what's the confidence rating, and what's your conversion rate.
That's cool. What A/B testing sounds? It sounds sexy, and it's like. It doesn't necessarily sound easy though, if you're not a very experienced marketer. So how do you recommend that someone starts with A/B testing? Are there, you hear when people talk about it, they're like, yeah, if you change the color of this button, it'll increase your conversion rate by 15%. And it's like, yeah, that's probably happened, and it definitely is a thing to test. But on a little bit more of a basic level, what do you think is the best way to get into it? Is it forms? Is it headlines? Is it images? How do you teach a basic marketer how to start A/B testing?
That's a really good question. And where do I get started is something that we hear quite often. So I'd say usually test something big, but only test one thing at a time. If you want and you want to try one design versus another design, go for it. But if you're trying to see what form converts best, what headline converts best, what images convert best, make sure that you're not changing all of those things all at once. You want to make sure you have just one variable. So you may have your original treatment and then kind of a version A where you change a headline, a version B where you change a form. And then you can see which one out of those three will perform best. But yeah, typically I would say things that are going to be more prominent. If you're trying a different value proposition. You've created a product or a service and you want to know what value prop is going to resonate best with your audience. You can try, a headline A versus a headline B to see which value prop resonates best. To your point as well, forms. It's sort of there's a bit of an art to how many form fields should I include. There's sort of enough form fields to qualify the lead coming in, but then not so many to make them panic and abandon. So you can test that kind of thing as well to see which will produce the best quality for you. One thing to keep in mind as well is, the more conversions is not always better. If you have a really long form that gives you really high quality leads, and then you create a really short form that has a really high conversion rate, but the leads that are coming in are garbage, you want to still go with the one that produces the best quality for you.
Yeah. We typically...
But those are two things that I'd start with.
Yeah. We often have the form conversation about required fields, how many fields, things like that. And our perspective is open it up and get a lot of leads. And then it's a little bit easier to restrict the form. And at least you kind of have a better baseline of a lot of unqualified. And then maybe start making some things required or adding additional qualifying questions and then trim it down versus... Sometimes we'll have conversations about, I want to make sure that everyone's qualified that fills out this form. We personally tend to lean towards get more and then qualify them later, restrict the form. But that testing the forms is one of the first areas that we go at least. Yep. Okay, good. And so your last tip is full platform functionality. So talk to us about that and what that means. And I think we touched on a couple of these things in the last video, but tell me about that.
Yeah, so this, this is kind of a, copy paste is such a small little functionality thing to improve efficiency. Custom 404 pages is something neat you can do with the app. The full platform functionality is it's a little, this one's kind of a big, kind of more of a strategic level. And I'd say it's more how you may want to choose to run campaigns. Essentially, full platform, so looking at things, and this is excluding A/B testing and dynamic text replacement and things like that, but focusing instead on the three kind of main products, which are the landing pages, the pop-ups, and the sticky bars. The pop-ups and sticky bars you can install on your website, or you can put them on your landing pages, and then you can build your landing pages separately. But combined, they present a really powerful suite of tools that can do some really amazing things. We talked about geo-targeting before. So let's say you're a company who wants to start marketing, in new markets, or you have some customers who come to your website who don't speak English, they speak a different language. But instead of having to localize your website, you could, for example, install a sticky bar on your website. You can geo-target it to particular regions. So say you want to have a sticky bar geo-targeted to regions that speak Spanish. Then you can actually, when visitors come to your website and then they get the Spanish bar, they can click it. And then instead of creating a whole Spanish website, you can create a Spanish landing page. And then just send your Spanish visitors over to that one Spanish landing page instead. So instead of having to completely change your website, you can do that one targeted sticky bar, which will then send people over to the content that's most relevant for them.
That's cool. Yeah, one thing that that really stuck with me from the last video that we did is thinking about your tools outside of the conversion environment. So, you mentioned sticky bar maybe being used as a menu or a pop-up to kind of redirect people to other traffic that's relevant on your website, or the sticky bar being a notification. That's just, telling someone that something's new that you guys said you guys do at Unbounce. So that kind of, blew my mind a little bit because it just opened up a world of possibilities that I wasn't really thinking about or expecting, because I've always conceptualized Unbounce as, landing page lead generation. But really, you can use these tools a lot differently.
Yeah, you mentioned the sticky nav. So with sticky bars on a landing page, set that up so when someone scrolls down, it appears, but then it can maintain your navigation, which it requires a little bit of a hack to do, but sticky nav is something that many people want, especially on mobile, which is pretty cool. Another example that I like to use about the full platform functionality, this is a pretty specific one, but in regards to events, and actually it could even include something like Zapier. Let's say you're running an event, whether it's a local meetup or you're running a conference or you're trying to get people to sign up for something, but it's regional. On your website, again, you can regionally target either a pop-up or a sticky bar, send people over to a landing page with an offer for that particular event, the information about the event, the sign up. You can connect the sign up to whatever other tools you use via Zapier, that thing we talked about earlier. But let's say like signing up for an event is too high friction an offer. You've already geo-targeted people on your website. You've sent them through to the event landing page. They're not ready to sign up for the event, so they go to leave. Well, you can actually send them an exit pop-up with a different offer, maybe giving them an ebook or the opportunity to sign up for a list or to sign up for discounts so that you can then remarket that event to them in the future.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like there's just, they're fairly simple tools on their own, but once you get into the targeting and how you can stack these things together, you can do some really advanced stuff.
Yeah, and I know that for us, we've talked a lot in the few videos that we've done about removing the friction of developers or that bottlenecking things. And now when there are website challenges or things that we're trying to do, you can think about Unbounce and be like, all right, well, can a sticky bar do this or a pop-up, or should we just create a landing page for that? And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from these two conversations is that there are a lot of other ways to use it that maybe don't come to mind immediately. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Removing tech bottlenecks. Like we have many developers who I love tremendously, but the thing is they don't want to be doing this work. Like they'd rather work on a lot of other stuff. So in a way, like you're kind of doing them a favor. I've talked to one client of ours who said the thing that he really loves is, in the past, he'd have like 10 campaign ideas and his creative team could mock up, let's say like 7 of them, but inevitably his dev team could only build 1. Now, if he has 10 campaign ideas and design mocks up, 7 or 8, he builds all 7 or 8. So that's the kind of thing that becomes a force multiplier when you're trying to grow a business. It just helps you execute so much more quickly.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that wraps up our conversation for today. And Ryan, I want to thank you for joining us and donating your time so generously to kind of put these 2 videos together. And if you haven't already thought about it and you're not already using Unbounce, you have to check them out because they're amazing. We've been using them for a couple years. We're on the agency plan. All of our clients run through there. We just try and keep everyone in the Unbounce environment because it makes life easy for everybody. As an agency owner, I know new people coming in can learn it quickly. It's easy to modify things on the fly if a client just asks for edits. Literally this morning, we had a law firm that said, hey, I need these 4 edits and I want to go live today. And I feel very comfortable just emailing my account manager saying, make those edits and we're good to go. And it makes everybody look good and it makes the day a lot less stressful. So if you haven't checked out Unbounce or are thinking about it, you should definitely give it a shot because it is quite incredible. So, all right, Ryan.
Thanks for that, Adam.
Yep, thank you again. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. But otherwise, we'll see you in the next video.